Coming to you from Brussels, the capital of Belgium, home of beer, waffles, speculoos, fries. Well, this last one's an ongoing debate between these guys, the French and the Dutch, so we'll just leave that. Anyway, Law 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. There are many different kinds of people in the world, and you can never assume that everyone will react to your strategies in the same way. Deceive or outmaneuver some people, and they'll spend the rest of their lives seeking revenge. They are wolves in lamb's clothing. Choose your victims and opponents carefully, then never offend or deceive the wrong person. Greene starts this law by talking about 5 notable types of people a person will have to engage with if he's concerned with power. Number 1, the arrogant and proud man. Greene says that this is the type of person you just want to avoid. His pride in overall being is very touchy, delicate, and his reaction to any slight is overboard. Greene says to simply avoid this oversensitive person at all costs. Number 2, the hopelessly insecure man. This person is not violent like the arrogant and proud man, but he's harder to spot. His ego is fragile, and when offended, he doesn't unleash his wrath on you. He just nibbles and bites at you for a long time. In present terms, think of passive-aggressive statements or boxing you out from a promotion. You don't feel the full venom. He just makes your life uncomfortable and difficult. Number 3, Mr. Suspicion. Greene doesn't really elaborate on this guy, but describes him as typically pessimistic and always thinks that someone is out to get him. He's easy to deceive because of this, just like Joseph Stalin was, but you don't want him to think suspiciously of you, so proceed with caution. Number 4, the serpent with a long memory. This is a person who will not show any immediate anger, but will patiently endure and ferociously strike at some later date. You need to recognize how calculating and exacting this person is. You don't want to find out when it's too late. And number 5, the 5th and last person that Greene calls the plain, unassuming, and often unintelligent man. The best way to deal with this person is by outright avoiding him. You'll just waste your time on this individual because he's so oblivious and unaware of what's happening that he won't understand your plans or intentions. So just stay away. Greene expounds on 4 of these people, but doesn't talk about Mr. Suspicion. So I'll quickly go over each one of the 4 that he listed. The first one is the story of Shah Muhammad from the 13th century. His empire was from modern-day Turkey all the way to Afghanistan. There was this young warrior ruler off to the east who also had some things going on for himself, and he sent an ambassador to Shah Muhammad with the finest of gifts. This young guy offered all of this along with a request to partner up with Shah Muhammad to reopen the Silk Route to Europe. He also promised peace between the 2 empires. Shah Muhammad thought that the young man from the east was extremely arrogant to even talk to him as an equal, so for the ambassador that he sent and for the requests, he paid them no mind. The young guy tried again, sending him gifts. But this time, the caravan was hijacked. The young man sent another group who offered the finest of gifts, peace and a partnership in this proposed endeavor, but the Shah had one of the messengers beheaded, and the other 2 were sent back with shaved heads, just completely disrespectful. The young ruler then sent a message to Shah Muhammad, quote, "You have chosen war. What will happen, and what is to be, we know not. Only God knows," end quote. The Shah was someone who could mobilize 200,000 warriors within days, so he didn't think anything of the newbie's empty threat. Within a year, though, the young guy led guerrilla-like campaigns, and the Shah's empire was decimated, forcing him to flee, in which he died soon after. Be careful of who you offend. In the case of Shah Muhammad, the young upstart was the notorious Genghis Khan. He then gives an example of the hopelessly insecure man. There was a group of con men running cons in the US in the 1910s. They came across a successful cattleman named J. Frank Norfleet. This cattleman was swindled for $45,000, and the group carried on to the next city, on to the next fool. There's no such thing as easy money, and most victims typically own up to their error and blame it on their own greed. But then there are people like Norfleet who don't see it that way. They think of themselves as innocent victims and won't let the embarrassment go. Norfleet, over the course of several years, tracked down every single con artist all over the world, from Canada to England to Mexico and all over America, and he brought every single one to justice. However, it all came with a cost on top of all of his monetary expenses because his effort bankrupted him. It ruined his marriage, but he died a satisfied man. Greene claims that these types of people are crusaders for justice and honesty, but they're actually immoderately insecure. When they're fooled and embarrassed, they'll do anything to overcome that, even if it means destroying their own lives. Someone who's fragile and insecure like this may react in a way that you would have never imagined. The third person that Greene talks about is the serpent with a long memory. He tells the story of a young Chinese prince who was forced into exile. He lived modestly and sometimes in outright poverty, waiting to return home to his life as a prince. During his exile, though, he passed through another state, Cheng, within modern-day China, and when he came to this new locale, the local ruler there, who didn't know who he was, treated him rudely. Even though the ruler was warned by his minister that this was a worthy prince who should be treated with courtesy, he again insulted the prince. Years later, when the prince returned from his exile, of course his living situation drastically changed, he remembered who was kind to him and who also treated him poorly when he was down and out. You already know where this is going. He went back to the ruler of Cheng with an army, took 8 cities, destroyed the kingdom, and sent the ruler into his own exile. Moral of the story is, don't judge a book by its cover because you never know who you're dealing with. The last example he gave was about a group of American art dealers during the 1920s who were trying to get Henry Ford to become their client. They were struggling and thought that if they could land Ford as a client, he would save them all because he was the richest man in America at the time. They went to his house in Dearborn, Michigan. What up, Dearborn? With books as gifts that they produced. That was a list of the 100 greatest paintings of the world, which of course they all had in stock. When Mr. Ford received the books, he said to them that these beautiful colored pictures in the books must have cost a lot. This being the 5th of the 5 types, the plain, unassuming, and often unintelligent man, Mr. Ford said the gesture was extremely nice of them, but he couldn't accept the expensive gifts of books from strangers. They explained to him that the presents were not the main deal. They were trying to sell him the paintings within the books. He replied, "But gentlemen, what would I want with the original pictures when the ones right here in these books are so beautiful?" Greene claims that Ford was unassuming and unintelligent, but I think a man of Ford's caliber was actually playing them. Greene elaborates on this law by saying, quote, "The ability to measure people and to know who you're dealing with is the most important skill of all in gathering and conserving power. Without it, you are blind. Not only will you offend the wrong people, you will choose the wrong types to work on and will think you're flattering when you're actually insulting them." He then gives 2 words of caution. Number 1, never trust your instincts. Gather as much information as possible. And number 2, don't trust appearances because the version that people present of themselves is typically inaccurate. Greene ends this law by saying there's no reversal of this law, and trying to find one is futile. The first thought that came to me about this law was be mindful of the people you see on your way up, because they'll be the same people you see on your way down. Another thought was about the serpent with a long memory. That reminds me of the people who were bullied and they go back to their school or workplace to slay those who bullied them. Of course, I don't condone the retaliatory acts, but if this isn't a warning to be kind to all people, I don't know what is. Another thought that came to my mind was the word but and how people use it. For example, I don't mean to be a jerk, but the but should signal to you to stop, but how many continue? Just to escalate the issue. You're saying that what you're about to say is jerky, but yet you persist in being a jerk. I don't want to sound racist, but then don't say it. The best way to sum up this law is be kind and good to all people, because for one, just be nice. Number 2, you don't know who they truly are. Number 3, you don't know who they may become. And number 4, you don't know where you'll be in the future. You may actually meet this person later on in life who you're about to insult. Well, that's all for Law 19. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. And when you do, according to Greene, you're able to attain some power. Signing out from the capital of Belgium and the EU, Brussels, take care and be awesome. Peace. Now time to get some Belgian chocolate.